Welcome to Pursuing Joy, where we share audacious stories of joy-infused strength. I have a Working Genius facilitator, again, in my Working Genius series, who's also Julie. So, Julie, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, where you're located, and how you're currently using Working Genius.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me on. It's always fun to chat with another Julie. My name is Julie Griffin. I'm located in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I work at a career and technology education center called Meridian Technology Center. And we serve about 900 square miles, it's our district, of high school students, adult students, and businesses in various capacities. So my focus is on the workforce and economic development side, so working directly with businesses. And part of that is facilitating Working Genius training for leadership teams and also like departmental teams. And so I use Working Genius to help them understand themselves better, help them build stronger teams, work together better, and really understand the best way to get work done while also being efficient and having fun while doing it. And then, of course, I also facilitate some internal training here at Meridian to help our internal leaders and teams also work better together.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to read your how you describe yourself on LinkedIn, and just give me some background to this. So, creative problem solver, training with heart, facilitation with spark, proud people developer, plus cowgirl at heart. Mm-hmm. So let's go. Let's start with cowgirl.
Okay. Well, that is who I am. So I grew up on a farm. I'm in Eastern Washington State, and I grew up riding horses and showing horses, and we had cattle and everything. We didn't necessarily use the horses to herd the cattle, but I've always been around horses and cattle and kind of had that cowgirl heart mindset really my whole life, being able to just go out and be resourceful and strong and do things. And it's just kind of a defining thing for me.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And so you've worked with farmers, ranchers, and small businesses before coming into Meridian.
Yes.
When you were doing that, was Working Genius a part of your vocabulary then, or was that pre-Working Genius?
That was pre-Working Genius. I can see looking back now how some of it kind of naturally filtered in as far as talking with farmers, ranchers, and small businesses on how to get work done, how to be effective and kind of pursue the right things. And I can see how now, maybe if they had what was showing up as a frustration was when they came to me for assistance, and I would help them guide through what the best solution was, which kind of relates back to the creative problem solver. I've always described myself as that. It seems like whenever something comes up, I am immediately like, oh, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? We can find a way around it. If this doesn't work, then maybe we can try this. And constantly coming up with or throwing out potential new solutions or ideas or ways around things. So even though it wasn't in my vocabulary then, looking back, I can see where it showed up.
Okay. So I've heard a little bit of kind of a debate or pushback, I'll say, from blue collar industries when it comes to Working Genius. So based on your knowledge, your background, what would you say to the naysayers when it comes to Working Genius and blue collar work?
That's interesting. I'm trying to think of examples of teams that I've worked with. And I remember one of the groups that I worked with was from a local municipality, and it was like the water department or the utilities department or something like that, which I would describe as very blue collar. And it showed up with them too, because it was even like, okay, if you need people to go out in the field and do the job and they lack tenacity, they may have to have a lot more pushing to go get the job done. Especially if they have the genius of maybe wonder or invention, they might have a tendency to figure out, oh, well, maybe I could do this a better way. Or what if we did it different? Or maybe even like wander off into like getting, distracted by something shiny versus laser focus on getting the job done. And so that's one way that it can show up and like kind of see how it can be helpful. And also, even in like the blue collar world, when you have teams and leaders and you have to work together or figure out how to get from point A to point B, that widget process is always there. And even if it's specifically related to, all right, let's build a road or let's build a new neighborhood or figure out like where this sewer line is going to go, like the widget process is still there. And if you have people on your team who naturally will lean into each of those steps, that process flows easier. So even though I know a lot of people say like personality assessments are touchy-feely or woo-woo or whatever, that's what I love about Working Genius is it truly is that productivity model. And so it doesn't matter what you're doing, like the widget still applies.
Right. Yes. No, it definitely, for me, when I first got introduced to Working Genius, it felt very abstract. Well, not that Working Genius, but joy felt like an abstract concept. And so it took me a while to be like, okay, once you match that up with productivity, I can put concrete results to that. And then you see the magic unfold in the concrete way, and it's not. I know, and some of us have personality assessment fatigue, at this point, as far as everything that has come out. But Working Genius is truly different when it comes to this. And so I always like to say that the work is happening, whether you want to in this way, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And typically the breakdown in the work is when you're like, oh, maybe there's something to this, when you actually can visually see it. Can you tell me about your personal Working Genius, like aha moment about your enablement and invention, how Working Genius was even introduced to you?
Yeah. So I've always been, I call myself an assessment junkie, or, lifelong learner is probably the nicer way to say it. And I am a part of a mastermind group of other similar trainers, coordinators, and facilitators from across the state. And we get together on about a quarterly basis. And it was like August of 22, right when the Working Genius book was coming out. And someone in our group had said, hey, Lencioni's got this new book out about Working Genius. Like, it's great. You should listen to the podcast, read the book, everything. So I was like, I'm in. And so I started listening to the podcast and read the book, took the assessment. And I'm always like all in on those things. And I think even at that point, I didn't recognize the value or impact that it was going to have. I just knew that, hey, this is kind of a cool, new, different way to look at things. And then in my role, my supervisor at the time said, hey, why don't you get certified in this? And then we can offer that as something else in your wheelhouse and another service that Meridian has to offer to our clients. And of course, I'm never going to turn down the opportunity to get trained, right? And so shortly after that, I started facilitating training for different groups in our areas. So I took the assessment, started using it. Interestingly enough, so when I took the assessment the first time, I think it was December of 2022, and then I took it again probably about a year later, just so I could capture like the steps of the process so we could send step-by-step instructions to our clients. I come out as an ET. So both times I came out as an ET. First time was ETID. Second time was ETDI. And then wonder and galvanizing state of my frustrations. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Tenacity is not a genius for me. Tenacity is 100% a competency because I like the concept of tenacity. It does not translate. And I realized this through talking with other people on my team here at Meridian and those that I worked with who do have tenacity as a genius, and what they default to isn't what I default to.
Okay.
And one of the things being like, for the majority of people with tenacity, if I say, if somebody gives you a project with no deadline, when is the deadline? Probably 90% of people say, right now, as soon as possible, yesterday, or something of that nature.
Okay.
For me, the answer is never. If it doesn't have a deadline, it will just keep getting pushed. It will never get done. Like, no priority for me whatsoever.
Then you're right about the tenacity. Yeah, I would say that.
And so
people with tenacity can't sleep with that.
Right. They can't let it go. They're like, no, no. Even if you tell them you don't have to do this right now, they're like, no, no, it's on my list. I have to do it. And I'm like, that is so not me.
Okay.
And so then I obviously started looking at like my original results and what that EI combination would look like and whether that sounded like more of an accurate fit for me. And it 100% was. So the adaptable designer is the EI combination. And I've always called myself a creative problem solver, which
Okay.
I think those are basically the same thing.
Okay.
And so it was like, okay, that really does describe me. And then I can't remember when it was timeline wise, but I had this experience where like I did something and then it was like, oh, there's your genius in real life. So my sister-in-law raises goats, and at this particular time, she had 3 babies that she was bottle feeding. And I don't know if you've ever bottle fed a baby goat, but it is a vigorous process, and it's impossible to feed 3 by hand. And so she came to my house asking for a tool so that she could build a goat feeder. And 30 minutes later, I had built her a goat feeder because I was like, oh, she needs this. And I have an idea for how we can do it. And oh, and I have this, and we can do this, and we can do this.
Okay.
And I put it together, and ta-da, we had a goat feeder. And I was like, oh, there it is. There it is.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now that makes sense. Okay. So enablement is a frustration of mine.
Okay.
And I was actually devastated by that. Because I was like, I like to help people. Why would this assessment suggest that I do not like to help people? So can you explain a little bit of what enablement is in Working Genius, as in how are they a different helper than the rest of us that consider us helpers?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the things that's important to recognize. And Lencioni says this too, is like everybody can help. They just like to help through their own lens, like through the lens of their own genius. And so for me, I can't turn it off. And I think people with enablement as a genius can't turn off that like compelling feeling to help or compelling feeling to like step in and provide assistance. So one of the things that I've recognized about myself now, knowing that enablement is a genius, like if somebody's in the hallway talking about something and I have any piece of information that might contribute to it or be helpful, like I have this urge to like get up from my desk and walk out there and talk to them.
Okay.
I don't even need to. Like they don't need me. But
there's you have some, okay, I see what it's kind of like the tenacity, not being able, like, can't go to sleep without the list. You are okay.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing, and this is one of the or 2 examples that I use when I'm facilitating and training people on it, especially at the beginning, is it's not just about helping, it's about providing that assistance in the right way and also being able to anticipate what's needed. And so one of the other things that I always iterate is your geniuses are really how you're made, not how you become. And so if you look back over your life, you can see where your geniuses have showed up like over your whole life. And so I remember this one particular time. So like I grew up on a farm and my dad was working on the tractor and his hands were greasy. And I remember thinking, and I was probably like 10 years old or something. I remember thinking, oh, his hands are greasy. He's going to need a rag soon. And I went and got a shop rag. And when he was done, he turned around and started to say, hey, and I already had it ready. And so I was able to read the situation and anticipate what was going to be needed. Another way I like to explain it involves folding towels. So I always ask groups, is there a correct way to fold towels? Usually people are pretty opinionated about a correct way to fold towels. And I say, okay, so if somebody with enablement is coming to help you fold towels, they will either watch what you're doing if you're already doing it and copy it, or they'll straight up ask you, how do you want me to fold these towels? Because they want to make sure that the help that they're providing is done in the way that you need it.
Okay. I like, I definitely help my way. So that is spot on. That makes so much sense. Kind of the way that you describe the geniuses, I like to just your calling or your purpose in life is how they are showing up. And then I think of competencies as something you develop because that's what life kind of threw at you. And I think just in your environment, kind of what you were saying about the tenacity
Yeah.
definitely makes sense. So tell me about maybe a memorable aha for someone else in a working
Mhm.
genius session or a team or someone who
Mhm.
didn't know until they knew.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's been a several where it's like they look at each other and like, oh, that's why you do that, or that's why we run into these problems. And a specific example is escaping me at the moment.
Okay.
Um,
That's fine.
but I remember it usually has to do with like an inventor pulling the process like up in elevation, like once you're at go time and then they have a new idea. That's usually where it's like, oh, that's what's happening. And that's why that's so frustrating for us, is because like we're at the implementation stage and you're wanting to pull us back up to ideation.
Yes.
That has happened multiple times through multiple teams.
Yes. No. And I am that. I am that person. I am WD. So I'm always trying to pull up and asking questions. And now that you're saying that, how you're like compelled. Now I'm seeing how that shows up. Uh, how how do you think? Well, actually, let's go to. So you originally were going to try to do consulting on your own, right? Or do you have a business of your own
Yeah.
based on training? What was the
Yeah.
foundation?
Yeah.
Was
There was a really short period of time in there where I was like, I can do this on my own. I didn't have Working Genius at that time.
okay.
I was focused on other leadership aspects, and one specifically was like time management and the science of timing, and things like that, which is great. And it's funny how getting into Working Genius, it's like, okay, I can see where these things tend to overlap. Um, Entrepreneurship is not for me. I think probably lack of T and lack of G, especially, really hindered that. I think at this point now, if I had to go out on my own, which I have zero desire to do, like I'm a much better, much happier employee.
Mhm.
I think I could make a go of it if I had to, but that does not give me joy. Being my
All
own
right.
boss does not give
Okay.
me
So
joy.
and you did that by trial and error. You just
Yes,
didn't have the language of
yeah,
the galvanizing and tenacity.
yes, for sure.
So throughout your story, or professional, personal,
Mhm.
where have you seen where joy has impacted your life in a way of it not feeling joyful in the moment, but looking joyful now, or just a change that you made that made or brought more joy into your life?
Hmm. Um, I think one particular is recognizing that like entrepreneurship wasn't for me, and now knowing what those specific things were that made it more difficult. Um, Most recently, I think specifically tying into Working Genius is I used um, really the language and the model to help me decide whether an opportunity was right for me. And so I had an opportunity come up that I was not looking for that sounded great, like on the surface and at first glance. Um, and then once I really dug into it and looked at like what it would entail and put match the description with the geniuses that would be required to do that job well, in my gut, like I knew galvanizing was one of them that was going to be needed. And so, of course, I had ChatGPT help me and confirmed what I already knew. And it was like, I cannot put myself in a position where I will be required to galvanize. Like, it will suck the ever loving life out of me. And even though all these other things may be great, it's not worth it, because that particular genius is so low and soul sucking for me. It wouldn't matter if I was making $1 million a year if I was required to
Right.
galvanize every single day. Would not matter.
Okay.
And so once I, really figured that out and made the decision that no, I'm not going to pursue this. This isn't right for me. Like zero regrets at all. And really a solid feeling of peace that I made the right decision for me. And a huge part of that was understanding my geniuses.
Okay. No, that definitely makes sense. How do you feel like how do you show up as a facilitator? So for me, facilitation, what I've learned is that doesn't bring me the most joy.
Mm-hmm.
And galvanizing is one of my competencies, and we already said enablement is my frustration. And it's because I associate it more with talking at people, and I prefer like a not necessarily a one-on-one discussion, but an
Mm-hmm.
interactive discussion. And what I've noticed as I've been interviewing working genius facilitators is that there's a way to go about it in that way, in a way
Mm-hmm.
that you are presenting that fuels your geniuses. So tell
Mm-hmm.
me, how do you use your geniuses in your workshops overall?
Mm-hmm. So it's funny you mentioned that. I actually had somebody in a session argue with me that galvanizing couldn't be a frustration because I was such a great facilitator. And I was like,
I would have argued that probably too.
no, like, I'm like, no, that for me,
I was shocked
galvanizing,
when you told me that
yeah.
about your frustration.
For me, it's 100% through my enablement and my invention lenses. So the invention comes in because I always try to adapt my presentations or my sessions to the group that's in the room. And so there's a lot of times like I'm making last minute changes to my slides like hours before because I'll have an idea. I'm like, oh, that would really work for them. And so that's like where the I comes in. But the enablement is really I'm not pushing them to do something, which to me is what galvanizing is. To me,
Okay.
this is saying, hey, here's this information. I'm going to come alongside you and help you understand so that you can go and be successful. And if it was, I think if it were different, where I was having to like push people to adopt it and live it, and they weren't, and I had to push them, that would be
Okay.
the galvanizing side. And I'd be like, I'm out. This isn't, that's not my gift. Like I can come alongside you, but the minute you show resistance, I'm out.
Okay.
And so a lot of like usually during sessions, I don't get a lot of resistance. And when I do, it it doesn't end up feeling like I'm galvanizing. I just have to find a different way to explain. So adapt the way that I explain it in a different way that they can understand. And
Oh,
usually it comes out. And every once in a while, there's somebody who's just like, I don't buy in, and they just sit back. And I'm like, it's okay. You don't have to. I'm not here to convince you that it's effective and it's valuable. Like other people in the room obviously find it valuable. So if you want to sit back, that's fine. And then I've had other people come back and be like, you know what? That was actually pretty good. I'm like, I told you.
okay. Yeah, I'll have to think about the resistance side of that. So you don't necessarily want to persuade
Mm-mm.
somebody. Okay.
No.
All right. Okay, that's interesting. That's okay. I'm taking a mental
Yeah.
note of that and going to
Yeah.
think about that a little bit more. When you were
Another another kind of aha moment I had about galvanizing recently, because tenacity is a competency, but it's a really high number 3. I am okay with kind of working through things to get them done, work through challenges if they come up or obstacles, whatever, task oriented challenges. And that's like the tenacity side.
Mhm.
And galvanizers don't mind working through challenges related to people.
Okay.
And so for me, that's the differentiation with galvanizing versus like tenacity specifically
Okay.
is the energy that you get from working through things related to either tasks or people.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's very insightful, actually. I like that. I'll have to um think about that. I had someone on here who was also WD. So both of us were WD, but
Mm-hmm.
my competencies were her frustrations and vice versa. And she was more of an operations person, and she was like, I'm using integrator, like COO type language. She's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not through and through. And I was like, well, I am like a visionary through and through. And it was very interesting to look at how the competencies come in and just tweak
Mhm.
that those geniuses a little bit. And especially if they're frustrations, right? If your
Mhm.
frustrations are like, yes, so because she was the enablement and tenacity, and so in the conversation, in and of itself was very enlightening, just to see how someone
Mhm.
shows up differently based on the switch
Yeah.
up of the combinations. When you were looking at the job description,
Mhm.
so and you knew it wasn't yours. So I when someone has facilitated a company or a business or the team, and then they want to take it further,
Mhm.
that's when I like to come in, or when people have kind of dropped off or fallen off the wagon and stopped using the
Yeah.
language. I like to come in and fill the team map with anybody that they're hiring with. And so I tend to deconstruct the job descriptions in order to go towards
Mhm.
those geniuses. How do you, is that just an automatic thing that you do now when you like have the working genius lens, that if you look at a job description or what someone else may be applying for, like, can you just automatically see, oh, that's galvanizing, that's tenacity? Does that a
Pretty
natural
much. Pretty
thing?
much.
Okay.
Whether it's a job description or visiting with somebody, and I joke like, if we just met and we're having a conversation, I'm silently judging you. Not judging in a bad way, but evaluating those keywords that you say and what geniuses they may align with,
Right.
and how you talk about your job. And because you can read body language and like spark in people's eyes when they talk about certain aspects. um, I can usually at least pin one of them. Like usually the bookends for me are pretty easy to peg, like your highest genius and your lowest frustration. To me, those are pretty easy determined
Right.
after visiting with somebody for a little bit. But
Yes.
yeah, it's constantly here and thinking about, oh, that relates to working genius here. And if we look at this through a working genius lens, then we can explain this or have to watch out for this or whatever it is. But yeah, it's always there.
Yeah. So so that is part of my interview. I guess you call it technique as well. Is okay, going down your resume, what you did this here, and they're telling me, did this, and then all of a sudden it's like, and then I did, and you can just you hear the elation and the energy as
Mm-hmm.
soon as they get to a job or a task that is very meaningful to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives a lot away, just like any of us when we're telling a story and we get to the exciting part of it, or anything that there is body language and there is just an uptick in
Mm-hmm.
the vocals as well. And I listen for that intently. So that is an awesome observation. With Meridian, what are you are you guys, how do you facilitate overall, as in, are you just in Oklahoma? How do people come in contact with you? What is their pain point? Why are they reaching out?
Mm-hmm. So 90, I mean, I haven't gone out of state to do it because our target that we serve is like this 900 square miles. That is our specific district.
Okay.
Um, Not to say that if the opportunity came up, it couldn't happen. It's just, it's not the norm. Usually when teams come to us, it's like, hey, we are having trouble with like communication or teamwork or whatever. Or we've got this new team member and we want to build some team camaraderie. What would be a good tool for us? Or even if it may just be like, I don't know what we need, but we need something. And so I've got a team member who's really, really great at visiting with like team leaders or like HR leaders
Mm-hmm.
to hear what they're saying or not saying, and then be able to decipher what the best solution for them might be. And sometimes it's working genius, sometimes it's one of the other adjunct facilitators that works with us. So it's not always working genius, but sometimes it is. Um, a lot of times it's just we need something for our team so we can work well together. What do you suggest?
Okay. Okay. All right. So they know that there's a problem, and sometimes they even know that it's communication
Mm-hmm.
as well. What? Uh, and this is, I don't think I've asked anybody else this, but it's something I'm kind of not struggling to piece together the information on this, or how
Okay.
you bring these to me. So I am in a lot of conversations with the more of the visionary type, and then like the COO type. And in EOS world, we call that the visionary and the integrator. And they tend to have opposing geniuses, but they need each other to get the vision across, right? To make the dream come true. But it's the breakdown in communication. How do you facilitate that communication breakdown? How do you combat that and when you're seeing that show up on a team? What is, do they just need a third party? Do they, what is?
A lot of times it comes down to like that elevation model and thinking through like really explaining working genius in terms of the productivity and like, all right, these are the steps to getting work done, and then relating it back to how they like what their default is and why each step of the process is important. And when you go out of order or when you backtrack in elevation, what that feels like. So I use a lot of examples and like scenarios to allow them to work through things. And a lot of times, like I don't have to tell them what the issue is or how to solve it. They're able to connect. Oh, when we did this, that caused this friction. Oh, and that's exactly what happens in the workplace. And then they can come back and talk about, all right, what does our team map look like? Where are we strong? Where do we have gaps? How does that show up? What might we do differently? And I love when we get like a step further and can go into developing team norms, especially if they have gaps, because then it's like, all right, you as a team collectively recognizing like none of y'all have discernment, but it's super, super important, especially in your specific line of work. How are you going to make sure that you don't skip over that? And then going through the group and them each voicing like what their individual commitment is for their own personal genius regulation, but then also commitment to the team and how they're going to help hold each other accountable. Like that is where like I just gave myself goosebumps, because like that is where like the magic happens and you really see that work coming to life.
Yes. Okay. No, that makes sense. And I do believe that the language itself does fix that overall, or provide the communication that is necessary. I was wondering if there was more that someone had seen it, because communication is the fundamental of all of it, really, at the end of the day.
I think a lot of times it just boils down to having the language, because it's like they understand what's happening, but they don't know how to put words to it.
Right.
And once you can put the words to it, that friction is still there, but since it's named, it's a lot less friction.
Yeah, and it provides a way to be honest without being condescending.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me what is currently bringing you joy, either professionally or personally.
What's bringing me joy is on the professional side. So I am officially getting to work more with like internal teams here, and am leading a group through a process that will have a huge impact on our organization. And even though it's not specific working genius, I am able to kind of infuse it into everything I do. And especially when I'm building out like these sessions with them, having the team map next to me and recognizing, all right, what are we trying to do? And how am I going to have to like coach them? Because like in this particular group, I'm the only one that has invention as a genius. And I'm the facilitator. I'm not the participant. So it's like, okay, how do I draw invention out of these people when that's not their genius, and don't suck the ever loving life out of all the ETs that I have? And even with working with like our upper leadership team, how I can coach them. I'm like, all right, you're going to be talking about this. Here's what your team map looks like. Here's probably where you're going to default when you need to stay here. And just that, I think that goes back to the EI side of me, but being able to infuse working genius into like everything that I do, whether subtly or obviously. And that just, I really love that.
No, it is great to see just the the difference. You are making a difference. Like we are making a difference by presenting this and giving. I mean, I know there's naysayers out there, and there's people that are just going to be resistant to things overall. But by far, I would say the greater number is like, finally, I have something I didn't know that I needed, and now there's a way to not explain yourself as in, oh, look, here's my predictive index, but oh, this is where I show up well in work. And that's why it feels like I haven't been showing up well, or it's been presumed that way. And now everybody knows, right? Not just me. So that's fantastic. What is the best way to get in touch with you if someone wanted to reach out for services in Oklahoma, or even just pick your brain about Working Genius? What is the best way?
Best way, probably LinkedIn. Okay. So I used to be super active on LinkedIn. I'm not so much anymore, but I still go there every day. So that'd probably be the easiest way to find me and connect. It's just linkedin.com/in/Julie C. Griffin. Okay. So it's easy to find me there. I always use my middle initial because I have a sister-in-law who's also Julie Griffin. So I am Julie C. Griffin.
I always run. I have several friends that are named Julie. It is, yes, I'm rarely the only Julie, so I completely get that. So, well, thank you so much for sharing these insights, and there's several things that I will be considering going forward just based on what you shared with us. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.